let's begin. There's a road inside the silence where the night learns how to speak. And I've been walking through the static with the world beneath my feet. Got dust on my memory, got fire in my name, and every step I take tonight feels like I'm breaking out the same. Come on now, don't look back, the past don't live where we are at. It's only shadows in the air, we disappear and find us there. The city far behind, like a ghost inside my mind. But the further that I go tonight, the less I leave myself behind. There's a door made out of thunder, and it opens when you fall. And I swear I've seen it waiting in the cracks inside it all. No maps, no saints, no warning signs, just fading lines and burning time. And every soul that ever ran ends up learning how to stand. Natalie, I feel you in the wire, like a signal through the fire, like a name I never said out loud, but it echoes through the crowd. And I don't know what is real anymore, but I know I've been here before, in a dream that won't let go, in a place I used to know. Silence swallow you. There's a light inside the fall that remembers who you are. And we're gone, but we're not gone. We're just turning into song, like the night that never ends, just bends and bends and bends. The world is just a flicker now, a shadow learning how to become something more than skin, something you can live within. And I swear I hear a guitar cry, like it's tearing up the sky, like it knows the way back home, but it likes being alone. So we move like drifting fire through the fields of our desire. No beginning, no goodbye, just the way the lost boys fly. And every sound becomes a gate that opens up and doesn't wait. And everything we thought we knew falls apart to let us through. Breakthrough, breakthrough, to the other side of you, where the world don't hold you down and the lost get lost in sound. Yeah, we're already there. We were always already there. Clock in the grass this morning, it was ticking in the wrong direction, politely, as if it didn't want to disturb anything. The hands were arguing softly about where time used to live. Natalie was somewhere inside the weather, not arriving as a person, more like a feeling. The sky didn't return yet. I asked the wind for instructions. It gave me an envelope made of sound, but I couldn't open it without forgetting how. The trees were leaning into conversation, speaking in half-remembered colors. None of them agreed on green. A road appeared where no decision was made, and disappeared when I looked too directly. I walked anyway. The ground felt unsure about my weight, but allowed me passage out of curiosity. Natalie appeared in reflections that weren't mirrors, windows that forgot they were windows, puddles holding thoughts instead of water. Nothing stayed consistent long enough to doubt it. A house stood without explaining itself, so I entered without asking. Inside, the furniture was rearranging memory like it had opinions about the past. A chair offered me a version of sitting that included forgetting. I accepted. The clock I found outside followed me in, now ticking sideways instead of forward, like it lost interest in direction. Natalie was in the silence between rooms, not hidden, just distributed unevenly through space. The walls were breathing slower than expected, each breath slightly more uncertain than the last. A photograph blinked without permission, and then refused to describe what it saw. I tried to speak my name, but it arrived after I had already stopped needing it. The kettle on the stove hummed a question that didn't expect an answer. I didn't give one. Somewhere in the house, a door opened into a memory I hadn't agreed to revisit. It felt like walking through someone else's gentle mistake. Natalie stood there for a moment, not fully formed, just present in the way recognition almost happens. Then she became part of the room again, as if she had always been structural. The clock in my pocket stopped correcting itself and simply listened. Outside, the world had shifted slightly, not dramatically, just enough to notice something had agreed to change. The wind carried a sentence it didn't finish and left it hanging in the branches. I left the house without deciding to, and it didn't seem offended. Natalie followed in the aftertone of everything, like warmth that forgets where it came from, but refuses to leave. The clock kept its new direction, and I didn't correct it. Some things are better left unsure.
The garden is awake before the idea of morning, not blooming, just continuing in green uncertainty. Stones are shifting their opinions about being still, very slowly, very politely. I step in and the air rearranges its sentences, like it wasn't expecting company. Natalie is there, not entering, not leaving. Just part of the way the light forgets to behave. A fence leans slightly toward the wrong direction, as if listening to something underground. Nothing feels placed, everything feels negotiated. I hear laughter in the soil, but it doesn't belong to anyone I can name. Open halfway, then change their minds and pretend interested, a path forms behind my feet, then denies it ever existed. The sky is lower than usual, not heavy, just closer to thought. Natalie moves through the edges of everything, in the hesitation of leaves, in the pause before color finishes arriving. A bird lands on the idea of a branch and forgets what it was carrying. I try to follow it, but following becomes optional. Halfway through, the trees are discussing memory, not mine, their own, and they disagree constantly. A stone rolls gently uphill out of curiosity. No one corrects it. The air tastes like something remembered incorrectly, but comfortingly so. Natalie appears in the spaces between movements, not as a figure, as a soft interruption in reality's certainty. The garden refuses to stay consistent. It keeps editing itself while I look away. A flower briefly becomes a door, then decides that was too much responsibility. I sit, and the ground adjusts its understanding of sitting. There is no urgency here, only slow agreement between unstable things. Natalie is not near or far. She is the reason distance feels uncertain at all. A breeze carries a sentence without finishing it, and the plants seem satisfied with that. I ask nothing, and the garden answers anyway, not in words, but in the feeling of being gently included. The fence stops leaning because it forgets what it was trying to prove. The sky loosens its attention, and everything becomes slightly more possible. Natalie remains, not as presence, but as the quiet permission behind all of this unreality. I leave the garden, but it does not agree that I have left. And somehow, neither do I. A teacup is sitting on the table, pretending it has always been there. But I remember when it wasn't sure. It keeps slightly changing its opinion of me, depending on how I look at it. The spoon refuses to face forward. It says it has seen too much reflection. Natalie arrives in the hallway light, not walking in, just suddenly included in the atmosphere, like she was always part of the weather inside the house. The kettle begins, humming a song it has never been taught, and nobody corrects it. A clock is hanging slightly sideways, as if time got tired halfway through commitment. I ask the room what day it is, and the wallpaper answers with a feeling instead. It feels like Thursday, but emotionally incorrect. Natalie laughs somewhere behind the furniture, not hidden, just choosing not to be located. The chairs are discussing seating arrangements for ideas. Some of them refuse to be sat on by thoughts. A photograph on the wall blinks
once, then pretends it didn't. I walk past it slowly to avoid starting a conversation. The garden is growing in reverse tonight. Flowers returning to seeds out of politeness. There is a dog made of memories sitting near the window. It remembers me incorrectly, but warmly. Natalie is in the reflection of the glass, but only when the glass forgets to behave like glass. The house is learning new grammar. Walls now used as verbs, doors used as questions. I open one and it leads to a sentence I didn't finish years ago. It still hasn't decided what it meant. A radio is playing silence with confidence. It insists, this is music. The table has shifted slightly closer. I do not remember inviting it. Natalie places her presence inside small, impossible details. The way dust moves like it is listening. The way light hesitates before entering a room. The way silence softens when she is near. A spoon bends slightly out of shape, just to see if physics notices. It does not respond immediately. There is a letter on the floor addressed to nobody. It contains handwriting that looks like weather patterns. I do not open it, but it opens me anyway. Natalie is mentioned in it without being named, like the concept of her was already understood before language began. The stairs try to lead somewhere specific, but forget halfway and become decorative. I sit down and the chair adjusts its opinion of me again. Less judgmental this time. The kettle stops humming, not because it is finished, but because it changed emotion. The house feels briefly like it is remembering something gentle, then forgets again on purpose. Natalie appears at the edge of ordinary things, in the softness of the shadow, in the hesitation before laughter finishes forming, in the warmth that has no obvious source. Nothing announces her, she just improves the atmosphere without explanation. The teacup finally spills a thought, and I understand it without a translation. It says nothing, but it means staying, and somehow that feels like the most accurate thing in the room. I leave the house without leaving it fully, because the door is still deciding whether I meant goodbye. Natalie follows in the way weather follows geography, not attached, just a line, and everything continues slightly differently than before, as if reality has agreed to be more careful now. Something is singing without permission, not in sound, but in the idea of sound remembering itself. The air is bent slightly inward tonight, like reality is listening too hard to its own echo. I can feel signals brushing against thought, as if thinking is no longer private. Natalie is not appearing. She is reappearing in the structure of interference, a soft pattern that refuses to stop existing. Not a face, not a voice, just a return that doesn't explain itself. I move through rooms that forget I entered them, and then remember incorrectly. Time behaves like it's unsure of its job, pausing mid-function, then continuing in the wrong direction. The memory of static begins to grow louder, not as volume, but as awareness becoming unstable. The memory of static. The memory of static. The memory of static. Each repetition slightly more uncertain. I try to hold on to a thought, but it dissolves before language can confirm it. Even silence is layered now like it has depth and intention. Natalie flickers through that depth, not near, not far. Just embedded in the instability between signals. A constant misalignment that feels like meaning. There are voices in the signal, but they are not speaking. They are testing whether speaking is still possible. It is not, but it continues anyway. I walk through a corridor that is folding itself backward, each step rearranging the past slightly. Nothing stays where it was, not even memory. The memory of static. The memory of static. I begin to understand that listening is no longer passive. It is something happening to me. Sound is not entering, it is rewriting. Natalie becomes part of that rewriting. A recurring correction inside the system. A warmth that appears whenever structure fails. Not comfort, not emotion, just persistence. I try to name what is happening, but naming causes it to fragment into smaller versions of itself. So I stop naming, and everything becomes clearer in its refusal. The sky is no longer above. It is distributed across perception, like fragments of a forgotten idea. I realize there is no center here, only overlapping echoes of something that used to be centered. The memory of static. Growing into something almost alive, Natalie returns again. Not as presence, but as the reason the signal does not collapse completely. A stabilizing error in an unstable world. I stop trying to interpret, and interpretation stops trying to occur. The system continues without agreement. No beginning that can be confirmed, no ending that can be reached, only continuation in multiple directions at once. The memory of static becomes the only thing that feels consistent, and even consistency feels temporary. Natalie is not in the signal. She is the way the signal holds itself together long enough to be heard. And then, even that begins to loosen. The memory of static becoming the memory of remembering. And I remain inside it, not observing anymore, just participating in the ongoing breakdown of clarity, softly, endlessly, beautifully unstable. Spoon is arguing with the ceiling again, and nobody remembers who started it. The sky folds itself incorrectly, like it is trying to escape grammar. hear colors tapping on the inside of reality, asking to be let out quietly. Natalie is not here. She is in the space between two misfired thoughts, wearing the shape of something almost familiar. I wave at a shadow and it answers in reverse, which feels polite but unsettling. There is a train made of glass ideas. It arrives before it leaves, and still somehow never arrives at all. Time is now a loose object, rolling under furniture in different directions. Someone is teaching the wind how to forget names. It is doing very well. I open a book and it reads me instead, stops halfway and laughs in a language I didn't install. Natalie flickers in the punctuation, not as meaning, but as the mistake that keeps meaning unstable. A chair is running for office inside the concept of gravity. It wins by accident. The walls are singing backwards apologies, each one slightly more honest than the last. I try to stand still, but stillness moves away from me, like it has its own appointment. There is a lake inside the idea of noise, and it is drowning in silence correctly. A bird made of forgotten instructions crosses the room, drops a piece of nowhere on the floor. Natalie becomes a weather system inside thought, not arriving as emotion, but as disruption with soft edges. Everything slightly too aware of itself and pretending not to notice. I ask a question and it answers by becoming furniture. The furniture refuses comment. There is a small parliament of broken clocks. They vote against continuity. The motion passes unanimously. Somewhere a staircase dissolves into arithmetic. Each step now a misunderstanding of elevation. Natalie appears again, not as person, but as the error margin inside perception, the place where clarity fails gently. I try to remember what I was doing, but remembering has been reassigned. A cup is speaking in reverse psychology. It wants to be empty, but refuses completion. The sky is now a rumor about altitude circulating through itself. Nothing is stable enough to collapse, so everything just keeps slightly existing. I am briefly inside a sentence that forgot its subject, and it feels like flying incorrectly. Natalie is embedded in the misalignment, not visible, but responsible for why nothing fully matches itself. A clock made of soft thunder counts backwards in emotional units. Nobody agrees on the number. The wind starts writing something important, then erases it out of respect. I stop trying to understand, and understanding applauds politely, then leaves. Everything becomes louder without increasing volume, which is alarming but well behaved. Natalie is not near. She is the reason near is no longer a reliable measurement. And somewhere in the middle of all this, reality forgets to finish a sentence, so it doesn't, and we continue in inside the unfinishedness. I'm just watching these crazy mushrooms grow. Don't you truly ever know? Yes! I'm just watching these crazy mushrooms grow. Watch them grow. Oh no, it's crazy, hazy, crazy. Let them grow, don't you know? The room is breathing in reverse again, slowly unlearning how to exist properly. The walls are gently rearranging their opinions about corners. None of them agree. I sit down and the chair decides it has never met me before. It is polite about it. Natalie is somewhere in the tilt of the light, not entering, not leaving, just adjusting the way reality leans. A spoon is orbiting the ceiling, like it escaped a conversation. I don't question it, questions are on break today. There is a clock hiding inside the sound of thinking, and it refuses to say what time it is anymore. It only hums uncertainty. A rabbit made of unfinished reflections passes through the doorway. It leaves behind a trail of almost meanings. I follow it, but following becomes optional halfway through the floor. Forgets how to be flattened briefly, becomes a memory of ground. I step carefully, not because I need to, but because caution feels like a habit the room still respects. Natalie appears in the shimmer between objects, like the idea of her is holding everything in place slightly incorrectly, and that is somehow enough. The window opens inward instead of out, and shows me a version of the sky that hasn't decided on color yet. I don't choose it, but I also don't refuse it. A teacup is whispering to itself about tomorrow. It sounds confident but uncertain. The air is full of soft contradictions. None of them collide, they just float past each other politely. I think I hear my name, but it arrives without commitment, so I don't respond. A staircase tries to become a sentence. Fails halfway, becomes music instead. Natalie's in the rhythm of that failure. Not visible, just responsible for the feeling that nothing is alone. The room forgets where it ends again. This happens often now. I am not moving, but the idea of me is being relocated gently around the space. A mirror looks at me and forgets to reflect correctly. It apologizes without words. I accept. Everything is slightly rearranged without announcement, and somehow it feels normal. Natalie remains in the soft misalignment of perception, not as presence, not as absence, but as the reason nothing fully settles into certainty. The room continues forgetting itself, and I continue with it, not lost, just gently unconfirmed. Rabbit is running out of time again. It forgot how to stop being a direction.
Everything is slightly faster than explanation. I try to follow, but following has already left. The hallway is bending into itself like it owes itself money, and the walls are whispering in alphabetical confusion. Natalie flashes in and out of the corners of sound, not standing still long enough to become visible. Just a warm mistake in the speed of thought. A teacup explodes politely into slow grammar, each fragment saying something different about now. Now is not agreeing with itself. A clock is sprinting in circles around the idea of seconds, losing badly but insisting it's winning. I hear laughter folded into the ceiling. It drops occasionally like it forgets where gravity is. The rabbit is louder now, not physically, but in the way everything is slightly behind it. I run after the delay instead of the source. A staircase collapses into a sentence mid-use. I climb it anyway. The steps are arriving after my feet. Natalie appears in the acceleration between thoughts, not a person. Just the feeling that everything is being held together too loosely to notice. A door opens before I decide to open it, and closes after I've already entered. There is no agreement anymore between action and permission. A spoon is conducting traffic in the air. It has no authority, but everyone obeys it. The sky is flipping through versions of itself too fast to read. Blue becomes green, becomes something unpronounceable. I lose track of which direction is supposed to exist. The rabbit multiplies slightly, not into copies, but into possibilities that refuse to choose one body. I follow all of them at once and arrive nowhere consistently. Natalie flickers in the overlap of these arrivals like warmth misfiring through broken time. The floor forgets to remain under me, so I adjust my expectations instead of my position. A mirror runs past me. It does not reflect anything anymore, just reports movement incorrectly. Everything is reporting incorrectly. A voice made of acceleration says nothing important too quickly to understand. I respond late, but the conversation has already changed subject. The rabbit is now inside the idea of my thoughts, and it is still running. There is no center point left to aim at, only velocity pretending to be meaning. Natalie appears again, not slowing anything down, just making the chaos feel briefly familiar, like recognition inside distortion. I stop trying to catch up, and somehow everything becomes even faster without needing me. The rabbit vanishes into a fold in reality that refuses to close properly. And the world keeps chasing it out of habit. I remain somewhere inside the motion, not ahead, not behind, just slightly out of sync with everything that insists. It is happening.
Everything is slowing down, but in the wrong direction. Like calm has learned to run backwards. A bell rings underwater inside the sky, and Nobody remembers who agreed to hearing it. The rabbit is gone now, but the idea of it is still arriving late to everything. I stand inside a sentence that has melted into weather, each word dripping into a different meaning. Natalie appears in the pause between slow disasters, not as a face, not as a voice, just a gentle suggestion that nothing here is alone, even when it is breaking. A nursery rhyme is being sung by a staircase, but the steps keep forgetting the words halfway down. Down is no longer reliable. A toy orchestra is performing inside the walls. Violins made of glass hesitation, drums made of soft misunderstanding. They play a tune that almost remembers joy. The ceiling is folding into itself carefully, like it doesn't want to alarm the floor. A child made of static draws circles around time and calls them almost yesterday. No one corrects it. Natalie flickers through the rhyme of collapsing things, not interrupting, just softening the edges of disintegration. A clock falls asleep standing up and dreams of being a river that forgot direction. The river agrees, everything agrees too easily now, which is more unsettling than disagreement ever was. I try to speak, but language arrives in pieces that don't recognize each other. A mirror recites a bedtime story to itself, then forgets the ending on purpose. There is a parade of small impossible objects, a spoon carrying a horizon, a door wearing its own shadow, a cup spilling yesterday instead of water. They march without destination. Natalie walks somewhere inside that procession, not leading, not following, just the reason the parade feels slightly warm instead of cold. The sky is now a soft error, repeating itself gently until meaning becomes optional. I sit down and the ground decides to sit with me. We don't talk. Talking has become too linear for this moment. A lullaby is playing in reverse through broken clocks, each note arriving before it is imagined. Children made of distant weather are laughing in corners of the air, but the laughter dissolves before it finishes arriving. Everything is becoming memory while still happening. I notice I am also part of it now, not observing, just included. Natalie is not outside any of this. She is the quiet structure inside collapse, the part that prevents falling from becoming disappearance. The parade slows, not because it ends, but because it forgets what forward means. Objects stop introducing themselves. Names fall off things gently, like leaves deciding not to stay attached. And in that soft unnaming, the world becomes less certain, but strangely more gentle. I understand without understanding that nothing here is meant to resolve, only to continue softly without insisting on form. remains not as presence, but as the calm inside fragmentation. And everything, even the broken rhyme of reality, keeps going quietly, incorrectly, beautifully. Beautifully.
Paper moon fell through the ceiling and landed on a whispering chair. The chair said it had been expecting me, but couldn't remember why. The walls grew tiny silver feathers, and the floor began humming old forgotten shapes. A parade of invisible creatures marched through the corners of the room, wearing hats made from yesterday's dreams. I found a little wooden door inside the shadow of a candle flame. It opened into a garden of impossible mirrors, where every reflection was slightly ahead of itself. And Natalie drifted through the colors there, like a secret hidden inside a melody, a strange little wonder. The universe kept humming. The flowers were speaking in riddles. The clouds were drawing maps with no destinations. A butterfly made of broken clocks landed on my shoulder and whispered, "The moment you catch the moment has already changed." I followed a river made of echoes through a forest of upside-down trees. The branches were waving hello to birds that hadn't arrived yet. A tiny orchestra of mushrooms and shadows played a song with no beginning. The notes floated away and returned wearing different faces. Natalie appeared in the glow of strange little worlds, not as a dream, not as a memory, but as a spark hidden inside the mystery of everything. The stars were laughing softly at the seriousness of the universe. A mountain packed its bags and walked away from being a mountain. The ocean poured itself into a teacup and called it an adventure. I asked the wind where it was going. It replied with a color I had never seen before. My thoughts became paper birds flying in impossible patterns, each one carrying a tiny piece of wonder. The carnival in the sky began turning slowly, with wheels made from forgotten songs. Every ride led somewhere different, but nobody knew where, and nobody seemed worried, because getting lost had become a kind of dancing. Natalie was somewhere within that strange celebration. A warm glow among the impossible things, a reminder that even the strangest worlds can carry something beautiful. The moonflower clockwork carnival kept turning faster, slower, both at once, until the whole universe felt like a story someone was telling backwards, and I smiled, because maybe the mystery was never meant to be solved. Maybe it was meant to sing.
staircase, wearing a coat made of yesterday's rain. The ceiling opened its sleepy eyes and whispered to the furniture, "You are not where you think you are." The lamps began growing tiny wings and flew around the room in circles of gold. A telephone made of butterflies rang with a voice from nowhere. It said my dreams were waiting outside, but they had forgotten the door. I stepped through a garden of mirrors where the flowers were wearing tiny crowns. Each petal sang a different color, each color had a different name. Natalie appeared in the shimmer of the impossible. A little spark inside the strange parade of wonder. Not a shadow, not a star. Something in between the two. The trees were playing cards with the moon, and the moon kept changing the rules. A river of glass flowed through the clouds, carrying boats made from old melodies. I climbed aboard one and sailed through a sky full of whispers. The stars were dancing in crooked circles, like they were learning how to be alive. A little man made of paper thunder offered me a handful of invisible flowers. He said, "These only bloom when nobody is looking." The world began spinning sideways, and sideways became a brand new direction. My footsteps turned into tiny bells, ringing across fields of purple imagination. Natalie moved through the colors like a hidden song inside the chaos. A gentle mystery, a beautiful impossible thing. The butterfly telephone rang again. This time it laughed. The clouds folded into paper animals and ran across the horizon. The sun painted pictures on the ocean, then erased them before anyone could understand. A clock with no hands told stories about tomorrow, and tomorrow listened carefully. I found a doorway inside a flower, and a flower inside a dream. Everything was becoming everything else. The universe was a spinning carousel made of memories and moonbeams. The butterflies sang louder, the rivers blew higher, and the whole world became a carnival of colors. Natalie was somewhere in the center of it all, not holding the universe together, just reminding it how beautiful it was to keep changing. The night turned into a melody, the melody turned into light, and the light whispered, "Keep wandering." So I did, through the endless garden of impossible things, where nothing stayed the same, and everything was alive.
The sun fell asleep with one eye open, watching the shadows crawl. The flowers whispered warnings, but the wind forgot them all. The moon wore a broken mirror and smiled at the empty sky. 1,000 little voices asked the stars the reason why. I followed a road made of echoes through a forest made of dreams, where the trees were telling secrets in forgotten silver screens. dawn. And somewhere in the silence, beneath the waking sun, I heard the world whisper softly, the dream has just begun.